Hello everybody and good morning. Welcome to the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. So we're going over the book, How to Have Confidence and Power with Dealing with People. And before we jump into the next chapter, we're going to go ahead and invite some people onto here.
Alrighty. Chapter 5. That's what we're on. Okay, let's go here. Do. Schmal's here, Jim's here. What's up, sir? Gonna tag a couple people. Josh Rose. Josh Waxman, I gotta get on his call next. Bess is flying back tomorrow. So we're taking over for Bess today, for those of you who don't know. Bess is actually with her granddaughter. Got to see some pictures. They're having a blast out in Southern California. So she will be back mañana. I'm sure she doesn't even want to come back at this point. Not because of lockdown, but because of grandkids. Because that's what they do. So, Chapter 5, how can you create a good first impression? It says a musician can often listen to the very first note and basically pick up the key that the music is performed in. In most cases, composition will begin in the same key. What he goes on to say is what does that have to do with human relations? And he says a lot. The manner in which we approach the other fellow for the very first words or actions nearly always sets the keynote for the conversation. So when you're going out to make an impression again, so it says make a first impression again. How do you make a first impression to begin with? However you start, whatever key you're in, that's what you're going to convey the message to. So he goes on to say that a door-to-door salesperson, has to learn how to do this instantly, because when he knocks and somebody answers the door, if he says, "Oh, I hate to bother you," or "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm only going to take a couple minutes," that apologetic starts off in the wrong way. He says the same is true with a gentleman who goes to a great restaurant and says apologetic to the waiter, "Hey, I don't mean to bother you, I'm sorry, but don't I have reservations?" He's like, you're going in, it's almost like a low self-esteem approach, right? You have low self-esteem, you're like, "Oh, I don't want to bother you, I don't want to be upsetting you." Instead of being super happy to be there and be like, "Hey, it's great, I have reservations," and kind of going from there. It says without revealing it, this person is actually setting the stage for the head waiter to act upon. You certainly can't expect to be the center table. "I don't mean to bother you, but I'd really love to have this." I mean, it just doesn't work like that. Does that make sense? Have you ever heard on the radio or television or in movies, lights, camera, action? It says when these words are spoken, action begins. And he's like, you kind of want to start a conversation the same way. Lights, camera, action. Okay, ready to roll. Get right into it. Whether you realize it or not, every time you have dealings with another person, you're basically setting the stage. If you set the stage for comedy, you shouldn't expect them to be serious and, react to a drama. If you set the stage for tragedy, don't expect the other person, to be super happy about it because you've already started with tragedy. Most people don't realize that the conversation they start with initially, a lot of people say, "Well, how was your day?" And because people are looking for attention, they're going to tell you what's bad. They're going to tell you what just happened. It's, "Oh, you're not going to believe." Whenever somebody starts like that, that there's some BS story, craziness behind it. And a lot of times, these are the same people that always bring us the story. So when they're like, you're not going to believe, you're like, I'm probably not going to believe. Or I know exactly what you're going to say. Remember that your very first words, actions, and attitudes invariably sound the keynote. So know what you want, and then sound off accordingly. How do you create a good first impression? There's a gentleman that I worked with, he's passed now, that probably was the best at doing this that I've ever seen. He would always start out the scene by introducing himself. Hi, my name's, and then he'd give his name. He's like, how are you today? And that's how he'd start. Start asking questions. He would compliment them consistently. He's like, hey, that's a great suit. Where did you get that? Or, hey, that's a great tie. Where did you get that? Or, he would always compliment what they were doing. There was a story of him walking down the beach. He had moved to South Carolina, got this beach house, and there was these 3 ladies walking down the beach. And he kind of caught up to him. He's like, hey, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're just walking down the beach. He's like, all right, well, great, I'll join you. And built this friendship with people he had never met. They were actually traveling. And this is just the way this guy was. He was on a plane one time, and he took the book out of the person's hand. It was like, hey, what are you reading? He's like, is this any good? And because he smiled, because he brought energy, it was amazing how he transformed and affected the other person. It says another way to control actions and attitudes of others is to remember that the very first impression we give them is apt to be lasting and impressionable they have on us. The first meeting usually sounds the keynote. So what you want to do is anytime you're meeting somebody, you kind of want to bring that energy, whatever energy you want to bring to what you're doing. You have to bring it right off the bat. That's how people know you. That's how people remember you. There's another guy in the business that many of us know that I've worked with named Tim. Tim also had this same magnetic personality that I see this other friend of mine, Dave, had. When you met him, he brought more energy than almost anybody I've ever seen, and it was constantly fun. And he said it like this. He's like, people want to laugh. He goes, people want to laugh. He goes, if you can make somebody laugh in the first 30 seconds of meeting them, typically not only will they remember you, but it's very hard not to like somebody who makes you laugh. So if you can get that to happen right off the bat, it works. So I've been calling these leads, and normally I'm not super friendly, but I'm using this to my advantage when I'm talking to people over the phone. People are always asking, I always introduce myself, hey, this is Jeff Gamble, the reason I'm calling, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, great. And I say, is this so-and-so? And they're like, yes, how are you? And I'm like, I'm living the dream here in Indiana. And they always laugh because nobody's living the dream. No, I mean, there's a few people living the dream here, but that's my point is you almost want to laugh when somebody says that. And I say, okay, well, let's get serious. I know that you, my office had passed me your information and you're looking, at work. And then I've got some questions for you and we kind of go from there. But it's setting that tone right off the bat. And when you make somebody laugh, all of a sudden you have their attention where they're listening to you. So, very first impression given apt. Okay, the first meeting usually sounds the keynote. From then on, it's mighty hard to get the other fellow to change their opinion of you. It's very hard to go from laughing and liking somebody to totally disliking them, unless you do certain things that obviously destroy that. Dave Roeder's here. What's up, sir? Other people accept you at your own appraisal. It says you yourself are more responsible for how you're accepted than anybody else. Many people worry about what the other person's going to think of them, but few realize that the world has formed an opinion of us largely from the opinion that we actually have of ourselves. It says this too can be based on the law of psychology that certainly is the law of gravitation. It says Emerson once said, it is a maxi worth all of exception that a man may have that allowance he takes. Take the place and attitude which belong to you, and all men acquire. The world must be just. It leaves every man to a profound unconcern to set his own rate. Hero or deviler, it meddles not in the matter. So he's saying you get to pick your personality. You get to pick your acceptance from the other person. Too many people come in and they're like, everybody hates me, everybody, I can't remember what that phrase was. Everybody hates me, everybody something, I'll just go eat mud. I don't remember where, I think it was from a movie. Have you ever heard that? Mm-mm. Oh, it's everybody hates me, nobody loves me, I'll go eat mud. It was from like a kid's book or something. And basically it was a person who constantly had this problem, and everybody had this problem with this person. In the end, they realized that they were the problem. I love the person that's like, well, I've had this problem at this job, and I've had this problem at this job, and I've had this problem at this job, and they go on. And I'm like, okay, 9 different W-2s. They've had 9 W-2s in a year. And it's always the business's fault. It's always the people who work there's fault. I was like, there's only one common denominator in these 9 W-2s. It's you. I don't say it like that, but, we all know. If you aren't accepted as you'd like to be, maybe you should blame yourself. Act as if you were nobody, and the world will take you at your own value. Act as if you were somebody, and the world has no choice but to treat you as somebody. And I've heard this in different ways, people meeting people. There's actually one story of this is a president that was way back. And he's like, I met this person. And he was like, wow. He's like, I felt like I just met the president. And he goes, I was the president. He's like, it was just so weird because the person had such confidence in what they were doing. So you can come across, anyway, I don't come across as a president of any country. That's not the goal. But you can kind of design that presence, and you want to have that presence. Are you coming in as the CEO, or are you coming in as somebody who feels out of place? One thing that can help you greatly in building a team and organization and network marketing is take people to places of high net worth. And what I mean by that is take people to great homes, take people to great car dealerships, have them actually walk through the house, have them actually walk or drive the car, or at least get in the car to kind of feel what it feels like. Most people live within a few $1,000s of the income they grew up around. Most people live around, that's how most people live. So one of the greatest things you can do is start expanding your dream, because you have to get to a point where you feel comfortable. I mean, if you want great people on your team, you have to be where great people are. And great people doesn't have anything to do with necessarily just money, but money has to do a lot with confidence. Money usually comes through confidence. It's a harder thing to just, create. In the book Think and Grow Rich, it says money is wooed, where it's very easy to seek poverty. Poverty seeks what? Disappointment. Poverty seeks depression. Poverty seeks low self-esteem. But money is attracted. How is it attracted? It's attracted through confidence. It says it has to be wooed like, a lover. So you basically have to have that confidence and that persistence, where it's a constant thought that you bring to yourself. And it actually is. It's attracted. It's really wild. How many people unwittingly create a bad first impression? A lot of people do. It says people judge you not only by the value you put on yourself, they judge you by the value you put on other things, your job, your work, even your competition. So how you value, are you thankful where you at? Are you thankful? It's really gratitude. See, if you're grateful for what you do have because you understand what other people don't have, you're better off. This is why I think everybody in the United States, everybody in the world that's in the modern world, and what I mean by the modern world is you have the ability to make money and travel, should have to go visit foreign countries. I mean, you really should. I think the school system would be better off. Everywhere would be better off. Take people to places, and I mean, let's face it, you don't have to go across the world to help somebody. You could go across the street. A friend of ours that we work with, actually one of the new people on our team, not for MLM or direct sales, but one of the new people on the team for our traditional business, told us a story yesterday that she was coming out of the dollar store and there was a lady having trouble getting stuff in her car, and she was able to help her. And then she wasn't having trouble getting stuff in the car. She was having trouble holding all her stuff as she was walking home. She was like 78. And this girl that works for us is 20 something, early 20s, and she's
24.
like 24 now, but I don't know how old she was when she met her. She said it was like last year, so maybe 23. And she's like, yeah, I helped her, and I drove her back to her house and found out that, you know, her husband, because of diabetes, had lost, you know, one of his legs, so he was, you know, unable to really move or walk. Her daughter had passed away from cancer, and she's like, she just didn't have anything. So I sat and I talked with her for a while, which is really what she wanted. And then she's like, I gave her my number, so if she ever needed anything, I could help her. And she's like, in one like late evening, it was like 11 o'clock, she called me and had ran out of her medication. And she's like, I don't have a way to get to, so she was able to go over and actually, you know, help her out. So what it did is, she's like, even though things were bad in my life, going and helping somebody else gave me a whole new perspective. Like, this person really had some things bad. And she's like, in fact, I haven't talked to her in a while. I've got to, you know, go reach out. So you don't have to travel the world, but going across the street sometimes helps. Going somewhere and helping out. When you're only around what you're used to, you don't have perspective on how bad it can be and how good you have it. Sometimes it takes us getting out of our comfort zone to a place that maybe we feel uncomfortable in, we're not okay with. So many times I related to, I kind of had a weird sense of how the world works until I went overseas. When I went overseas and we ended up in Brazil, you know, I'd always heard about poverty, but it's different to see it at that level. You know, and in the United States, I've been to places that don't have a lot of money. You know, I've been downtown. I've been around the Wheeler Mission. The Wheeler Mission supports the homeless. I've been to the Wheeler Mission and talked with the people who ran it at the time that I was there, and what we could do to help out and how we were going to help out, and we did some projects. It was a different level. A lot of times, and not all the time, but a lot of times it was substance abuse based, from the people that we talked to at least. But going to Brazil, I saw a different level of poverty. Here's something I didn't see at Wheeler Mission. I didn't see any kids, because in the United States, if you're homeless and you're a kid, usually CPS or one of these programs will pick the kids up. Not that there's not kids that are homeless, because there are, living with family, but they weren't at the Wheeler Mission. When I was in Brazil, it was amazing how many kids. Like, I'm talking from 2 years old, barely walking, all the way up to teenagers. Just prior to adults. One of the biggest differences is there are no social services to help out. You know, CPS isn't driving through going, hey, you know, do you have a house? Do you have water? Do you have food? No. Are your parents taking care of you? We got to meet some kids on the beach, and they're like, well, you know, our parents left us, basically, and we lived with our grandmother, and our grandmother died. You know, can we come home with you and sleep in the garage? Like, that was, it was translated, but I kind of got, you know, back to your house. And then I remember, you know, back to your garage. And then I remember talking, I just remember automobile, like they had mentioned automobile. So I only know certain words in Portuguese. And I was like, what is he saying? And he's like, oh, he's saying that he'll come clean the car every day. If you let him sleep in the garage, he'll clean the car every day. Like, wash it, wax it, whatever. This kid was like 7 years old. I mean, the perspective I had when I came back is when people complained, I literally wanted to punch them in the face. Like, hard. And I was a competitive fighter for a long time, so that probably wouldn't have been a good thing at all. It just gave me such a different perspective that although, you know, you can be in a bad situation in the United States or North America, but let's face it, if you reach out to the right people, you can get help. The problem is most of us reach out to the wrong people. Who do we reach out to? Most of us reach out to our friends and our family, and our friends and family might have put us in that situation. Not in every case, but in a lot of cases, they might have given us that self-esteem that we're, so upset about. So reaching out to the right people, watch this, the right people are usually uncomfortable to be around. When I was trying to get out of my situation, the people that I really should have been around, that I needed to talk to, I was uncomfortable to be around. Why? Because they were okay and I wasn't. There's a verse that says, judge not, for thee not be judged. So that's really hard. I judge people all the time. And what I find is people with low self-esteem, and people who internally are kind of angry. I think this is Russ. I'll call him in a second. People who are internally angry, what do? they constantly create that drama. And they judge other people. They judge other people. And worse that they judge other people, they generalize. They're like, all these people, I was really all of them? A friend of mine said that the other day. He's like, all these, it was a political conversation. He's like, all these, and then he finished the sentence. And I was like, all of them? I was like, you know all of them? I was like, how many people is that? Like 60 million? I'm like, you know all of them. I was like, a third of people don't vote at all. A third of the people vote this way, and a third of the people vote the way you're saying. I said, so you're telling me you know all of them? I was like, how did you have all those conversations? He's like, shut up. I was like, all of them, huh? I said, well, tell all of them I said hi. Moving on. It says getting people to say yes, because that's really what we want people to do is say yes. He goes, if you want people to say yes, you want to give them reasons why they should say yes that benefit them, not benefit you. So many times we want people to say yes. Oh my gosh, if you could join my team, I would make it to the next level. If you could join my team, I would get a check. If you could join my team, I would get promoted. If you could join my team, I would get recognition. Well, that's all you. Where did you say it's going to do anything for them? Why should they say yes? Just to help you? Now, it's different if they owe you money, right? I mean, hey, you owe me money. You need to get in because and then what will happen is that'll wipe out our problem and we can kind of go from there. Hello, Stacy. So getting people to say yes, it says, don't expect a yes response from the other fellow if you set a negative stage. And it talks about a well-known psychologist writing in a book, Influence Human Behavior, says that the best way ever discovered by psychology to get a yes response is to put the person in a yes mood. You do this by creating positive and affirming atmosphere rather than a negative one. So I have a friend in the business that when he presents, he uses a phrase inside of his presentation about right now. He's like, man, right now this is taking off. Right now they just put everything in place. Right now this group of people is coming together. And I was kind of counting one time in a presentation. I was like, Tim, did you know you said right now 436 times? He's like, really? 436? He's like, I should have said 500. So always positive, always go to the right direction. But another thing that he did is he's like, everybody would say yes and everybody would say no. He goes, everybody wants more money, right? I mean, everybody would say yes to that. Nobody would say, no, I don't want more money. He goes, everybody wants more time. Everybody would say yes to that. Now, people wouldn't say no to that. So if you understand what he was doing is he was setting people up to say yes because he was getting them to agree upon yes statements. Now, that takes some prior thought going in, but once you learn how to do it, it is powerful. I mean, it's extremely powerful. So yes can sometimes be negative. However, don't, however, make the mistake of the fellow I know in trying to carry out his own advice. He was in such a pessimistic, negative thinker that even though he asked questions and got yes answers, they were all pitched in a negative manner and basically set the mood. Isn't this heat terrible? Oh yeah. Isn't the economy awful? Those are things, people do that and they're like, well, I'm getting yes to everything I'm saying. Yeah, but you're negative. And starting out negative, you can't turn that around to a positive. It's just harder to do. Assume that the other person will do what you want. How do you do that? You basically have to pitch it to them in a manner that's going to benefit them. If it doesn't benefit them, because people are ego maniacs to begin with, people are really usually only thinking about themselves. You have to pitch it in a way where they're going to get what they want out of it, even though it helps you. So just a quick recap of this chapter. It says, in dealing with other people, you yourself sound the keynote for the entire theme. When you begin the interview, when you begin the conversation, when you meet somebody for the first time, when you meet a waiter, when you meet a waitress, when you meet a gas station attendant, when you meet somebody at the grocery store, how you start out is the way that usually it goes. 2, if you start off on a note formally and the meeting is formal, if you start out friendly, it's going to go friendly. If you start the stage with business-like discussion, it'll go business-like. It says, don't start on apology and expect to change from apology. 3, when you meet somebody for the first time, the impression you make is very likely to be the keynote that will determine how things go for the rest of that relationship. Other people tend to accept you at your own evaluation. So whatever you think you're worth, that's how people are going to treat you. If you think you shouldn't be there, people are going to feel like you shouldn't be there. You're doing that. It's really wild how that stuff works. Hi, Stacy. 5. One of the best means discovered for impression the other fellow is favorable is not to strive too hard to make an impression, but let them know that he is making good impression on you. So it really comes back to compliment. If you start complimenting somebody, it's hard to compliment somebody and be disapproving that they're there, right? If you're complimenting somebody, you're approving that they're there. It's kind of like an understated, like known fact. 6, people judge you not by the opinion you hold of yourself, but also by the opinions you hold of other things, your job, your company, even your competition. So how you treat everything else is a lot of times how they feel you're going to treat them. If you're like, jobs suck and people suck and this is terrible and that's terrible, they're like, well, they're obviously going to think I'm terrible too, so I'm not going to talk to them. Negative opinions create negative atmosphere. Don't cut people down. Don't cut things down. It says don't be a sourhead. So this book was written like 300 years ago. 8, the way itself in which you ask things sets the stage or sounds the keynote for the other person's answers. Don't ask no questions. Ask yes questions, but the yes questions you ask have to be positive. So with that, that is a wrap. That's what we got, and I have to jump on another call. Josh Waxman asked me to jump on that. Okay. Tracy anybody's welcome to join us. We're going over this book, How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People. We're on chapter 6 tomorrow. We do this Monday through Friday. We choose a book of the month, but really we're going through like a book and a half a month because the chapters are small. And the next book that we're actually going over is Talent is Never Enough by John Maxwell. Talent is Never Enough by John Maxwell, because we're about halfway through this book already, and people are like, what's the next book? It's Talent is Never Enough by John Maxwell. We go through a lot of Maxwell books, but we're throwing in some different ones. The last book that, well, we're actually going to need another one because we're going to get through this one, and then we'll get through that one in November, and we'll be through the other one before we, but the next book after that is Leading at a Higher Level. Leading at a Higher Level. Amazing, amazing book. So that, anything else?
If you guys would like these notes, we're going to post them on the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show Facebook group, so you guys can get those notes. And we're also uploading these to YouTube, so if you guys would like to go back through them and rewatch them, you are more than welcome to. And with that, I think that's it.
That is a wrap.
So we will see you guys tomorrow with chapter 6.
Cool.